Hey everyone, hope you're all doing really well. So I have a new SSD to install into my system, and this is really the last piece of my Gen 4 puzzle. The SSD I'll be installing today is the Sabrent Rocket. So this is the Gen 4 edition, as I've said. This is the 1TB version. It's not a new drive. This comes secondhand off eBay. Picked it up for 120 US. As anyone who knows their pricing will know, that is a very good deal. I'm not sure exactly yet in what condition the drive is. It looks physically in a good condition. Obviously, these drives are not that old just yet, so there shouldn't have been too much data written on it. But I'm going to install it, have a look what condition it's in, and then move over data from my current SSD that I'm using, the Samsung 860 EVO, to the Sabrent Rocket Gen 4. So some lovely blue LEDs from the insanely awesome Phanteks P500A. Just a quick look at the drive itself. The SSD comes in a lovely metal casing, very well packaged. Here we have the thermal pad, which I will be making, well, not sure if I will be making use of this. There is a built-in SSD cooler, or heatsink rather, that comes with the Gigabyte motherboard that normally have their own thermal pads. So I might not need that, but we will see shortly. And then here's the drive itself. I'm always surprised by how small the NVMe SSDs are, considering the amount of power and performance that they pack. Here we go. Rocket NVMe 4.0, 1TB. And the performance on this should be incredible. So here is the heatsink from the Gigabyte X570 Aorus Elite. It is a nice and thick heatsink. Thermal performance should be excellent. And it does come pre-installed with a thermal pad. You just need to remove the plastic cover and you are good to go. One problem that I do foresee, however, is that this is the extra long, for the extra long NVMe SSD, the 10mm one, or sorry, 10cm one. And the Sabrent NVMe SSD is a 2280, which means the length of the SSD is only 8 centimeters. So if I do move the screw-in pin of the heatsink on the motherboard, then obviously this heatsink is no longer going to fit. So I am going to have to see whether I can find a way around that. I would definitely not want to use the SSD without a heatsink. That would definitely have a bad effect on performance once thermal throttling kicks in. So hopefully the solution is fairly straightforward. What I've done is I've removed the riser screw, or the riser fitting, from the secondary M.2 slot. The Aorus Elite does come with two M.2 slots. And I've screwed it into the 2280 spot on the primary slot, and I will leave the 2210 slot as it is. So I will be screwing in the M.2 into the 2280 slot, and then I will be screwing the heatsink into the 2210 slot, and hopefully that will work. So let's give that a try. Okay, so that does in actual fact seem to work. M.2 drive is installed in the 2280 screw holder, and the heatsink is installed in the 2210 screw holder. The only thing I'm not 100% sure about is whether the thermal pad is actually making contact with the SSD. So I'm going to remove my graphics card just to see whether I can have a look at what's going on underneath the heatsink. I don't know whether you will be able to see this on the video, but there is a very thin outline of the M.2 drive on the heatsink. Sorry, my focus not playing along with me there. But the contact, it definitely looks like it's not making 100% complete contact, so I will need to try and find a way around that. Okay, so what would have helped is if the screw that connects the heatsink to the motherboard did not have that little extended piece at the bottom. I could then just screw the heatsink in a little bit further until it puts some downward pressure on the M.2 SSD. However, that will not be possible, so what I may then need to do is remove the screw from the heatsink and use a different one. Okay, so what I have actually decided to do is just to leave it as it is for now. What I will do is have a look at temperatures of the M.2 drive at load. Normally, when you are making use of a heatsink for your M.2 drive, load temperatures are roughly between 60 and 65. based on some reviews that I've seen, and without a heatsink the temperature goes up quite a lot to around about 80 to 85. So the heatsink definitely makes a massive difference, and I will be able to see from some testing results whether the contact of the thermal pad is a problem. So I will revisit this at a later stage if I need to. Okay, so booted into Windows. Disk 0 is my primary boot drive at the moment, the Samsung 860 EVO. Drive 1 is my storage drive, the Seagate Skyhawk 6TB, and then we have the Rocket M.2 SSD Disk 2, which I'm going to initialize now, and then do just a quick test, see what the performance is like. Okay, so here we have the ATTO benchmark performance numbers, and this is generally the utility that you would want to use to see whether you are getting the rated performance from your drive. And this is also generally what you want your graph to look like. Obviously, a slow start at the smaller Q depths, but as you move up, you definitely want your performance numbers to increase and generally max out towards the end. So what we're actually getting faster reads and slightly slower writes than what the drive is rated for. It is rated for 5,000 megabytes per second. That is just crazy, and we are actually getting around 5.22. The writes are rated for 4.4 gigabytes per second, and we generally got in the range of 3.86 to 3.97 was the highest. But nothing alarming there. We are definitely getting very close to what we should be. Drive in tip-top condition. What I'm going to do right now is, I think there is a Sabrent utility for their drives. I'm going to download that and see whether there's anything, maybe a firmware update, and then I'm going to get started on the cloning process. So here we have the Sabrent Rocket control panel, which will give you all the information pertaining to your drive. Temperature at the moment is 36. Obviously, that's not going to be a problem when the drive is sitting completely idle. It is only being used as a secondary drive at this point. Drive health, the important one, 100% at the moment. That's good to see. Here, it will give you all the information pertaining to the drive in terms of a usage. We can have a look at the bottom. It says terabytes read and terabytes written, which at the moment is 0.16. Now, just to put that in perspective for you, the longevity of this drive, if we have a look on the web, at the moment I'm on hexus.net. The TBW rating of the drive is 1,800, and at the moment it is sitting at 0.16. That should give you a good idea of how long you can actually use these drives for. Yes, we definitely should not be running into performance or lifespan problems anytime soon. I'm going to go ahead and do a firmware check real quick. No new update available. Your current firmware is up to date. Here I have my very trusty USB-C external ROM drive, which is obviously then plugged in directly to the USB-C port of the Fantex. I have booted into Acronis. This is a TrueImage version 2014. There are newer versions of the software. I still prefer this one. It works 100% on Windows 10, and I find the general interface just to be a little bit more user-friendly than some of the newer ones. So we are going to Tools and Utilities. We are going to Clone Disk. I always select Automatic if I am cloning a operating system. That's always been more than enough for what I've needed. I've never needed to do it manually. So my source drive is obviously the Samsung 860 EVO, and then the target drive, it is not picking up the Sabrent. That is very strange. So I was a little busy telling you guys how awesome Acronis 2014 is when it didn't work. I suspect that because the version of the software that I'm using is so old that it does not have support for NVMe drives. I have never actually cloned to one of those before. So I went to their website, and there is a version of Acronis TrueImage specifically for Sabrent. How this normally works is that the software is free for you to use as long as it can detect that there is in fact a Sabrent drive in your system. So I'm going to go ahead and install this and see if we have any better luck. Okay, and we're in. This is the version 2020 of Acronis. So let's go straight into the tools menu, clone disk. We will stay with automatic, and there we can see immediately the Sabrent Rocket. So my previous hypothesis does appear to be correct. Our source drive is going to be the Samsung 860 EVO and the destination drive. If we ever get there. Is going to be the Sabrent Rocket 4.0. Now, normally when I do the cloning with Acronis, I'm normally replacing a notebook's mechanical drive with a SSD, and obviously the cloning process takes place via USB 3 or the USB interface. So this can take a while, generally in the region of 20 to 30 minutes. But since we are cloning from an SSD to an SSD and they are both connected directly to the system, I am very curious to see how long this is going to take. It should actually be really quick. Okay, we are going to delete all the information on the destination drive. We have about 1 minute remaining on the cloning process, and it has taken, at the moment, it's taken about 8 minutes or so, 8 or 9 minutes. So yes, 10 minutes for the cloning process. That is definitely a lot faster than it normally is. Okay, so just a quick update for you. I was not entirely happy with the results of the cloning within Windows. I was having 1 or 2 performance issues. So I decided to rather create a bootable USB and then redo the cloning. As I've said, this is version 2020, so we have no problem with picking up the NVMe drive. So I'm just going to do this again, and hopefully that will resolve any and all issues. So in the end, despite the fact that I was able to successfully complete the cloning process, I did end up doing a fresh installation of Windows anyway. And that came down to the fact that I was still having 1 or 2 performance issues that you should definitely not be experiencing with an NVMe SSD. Now, there are massive amounts of performance to be had with the PCI-E Gen4 platform. However, it is important to keep this in perspective. And at the end of the day, the question becomes, do you really, or are you going to benefit immensely by upgrading from an older gen storage, something like a PCI-E Gen3, for example? And the straightforward answer is no. Unless you are using very specific workloads that will really see a benefit from the increase in read and write speeds, your day-to-day performance is really not going to vary very much. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's not going to vary at all. Your day-to-day tasks like reading your emails, using your web browser, playing music, playing movies, even your loading time between games is really not going to see any benefit from moving to the Gen4 platform. And there is the factor of cost to keep in mind as well. If you do move to Gen4, you are upgrading at the very least your CPU, your motherboard, and your solid state storage in order to get the full performance benefits. And this is going to set you back probably at least in the region of 10 to 15,000, depending on which components you go for. On the other hand, if you are building a completely new system from the ground up, then it does make sense to go for the latest platform available, if your budget allows for it. However, for existing users, it really makes no sense financially or performance-wise to move to the Gen4 platform, as there is zero performance increase for your daily tasks. As I've said, if you do have very specific data sets that require you to move loads of information very quickly, then it may be worthwhile for you. But if you are moving from something very recent, such as the Gen3 platform, even that may be debatable. At the end of the day, it really is up to you, the end user, and how much you are willing to spend on your upgrades. Thanks for watching, guys and girls. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them down below. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.